Hello, podcast lovers. Thank you so much for tuning back in. As promised, here's another great example of just success stories that I always love to share light on and help people to see that we all go through trials and tribulations. And I'm so happy to have my guest, Aaron, today on because Aaron and we had met at a mastermind meeting, which was absolutely mind blowing and it was wonderful. And, we quickly started talking very transparently about a specific topic today, which is, wearing a mask. So, Aaron, thank you so much for, again, being part of my journey and wherever this journey is going to take me. I don't know yet, but
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that first of all, I'm really appreciative of the connection that we both felt in that
Yeah.
moment, wanting to talk about such deep and very personal experience too, and for
Yeah.
you then to agree to say, this is it, I'm a strip myself naked completely and speak on this. It takes a lot of courage to really do
Thank you.
that, but also I feel like it takes a lot of courage just in general to really acknowledge to ourselves that we are fake
Hmm.
sometimes, that we do things out of a robotic movement because
Yeah.
we either were born into a pattern or we adapted a certain pattern or we took it as a defense mechanism because it made us feel safe.
Yep.
And honestly, I'm so curious to find out, where did you really notice first time that you, in a sense, were wearing a mask in your
Yeah.
private life or even business,
Yeah.
where it kind of dawned on you in a little bit, where you're like, oh, actually, that's not really me. That's really something I'm doing out of this or that reason. So I'm so curious to
Yeah.
find out.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect place to start because you had said, when you kind of find out make that courageous step. I think the interesting part for me was that I didn't know. I mean, you mentioned comfort zone, right? My mask was being in the comfort zone. I think when you and I first started talking, the thing that I said specifically that always shows up for me is when the going got tough, I went the other way because I went to a comfortable place, right? So
Mhm.
I spent a lot of energy just avoiding difficult conversations, things. And I had a very successful life. I had a wonderful upbringing. My wife sometimes, asks like, where does this PTSD come from? So I'm like, I have no idea because there wasn't this experience, but I found myself in this place where I had this mask on, just kind of trying to stay below the radar and, living a very comfortable, happy life. I was successful, am successful, and, but I wasn't fulfilled. And I think that was the moment for me was like, just how had this nagging feeling that there was something more, something bigger, and I couldn't figure out why it was felt so impossible to kind of get to. And
Mhm.
so I guess what transpired for me was I was in my 40s. When you reach 40, you kind of hit these milestones and you start thinking about different
Yeah.
things, legacy and all those types of things. And it's like, man, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing here? And I think that once I wanted to finally start uncovering that, I realized that it was that comfort zone, or that, as we're talking about today, that kind of mask, right? I put on a good, brave front all the time, but I never really went and dealt with any of the challenges, the normal challenges we go through in life, the stories that kind of get embedded even out of love, right? Like most of the challenges that we probably have right now as adults probably came from our parents. And in my
Mhm.
case, my parents loved me very much and wanted to give the world to me. And I feel the same way about my kids, right? But then I wonder, what am I creating for him? And so I think it is those stories that we start telling ourselves. But like I said, for me, it was such a comfort zone to just leave the mask on and be that person. And I think what opened it up for me was just understanding that, okay, great life, everything's good, but there's more. There's absolutely more. And I've learned that over the last 5, 7 years or so, that there is absolutely more, right? Relationships like this, getting to meet you, doing things way outside of my comfort zone, being able to speak in front of a room of people, which, you know, public speaking was my number one fear. number two, needles are still a big fear of mine, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I completely get it. And I'm wondering, when you tapped into and saying that you felt like there needed to be something more, I'm
mhm.
wondering if that kind of like tug inside of you, that soul call, when we say we go on a soul search,
Yeah.
if that was maybe part of it, just wondering like, okay, this is all great, but like, why am I not able to have these difficult conversations? And I want to assume that they were relationship based in
Yep.
any relation,
Yep.
neighbors, friends, romantic,
Everything.
whatever.
Everything. Yeah.
But also just maybe coworkers, where you sometimes really need to step up and say, like, look, this isn't something that I'm okay or I'm not comfortable with. And even saying that, I feel like, is really tough sometimes, to just really say, what, I am simply not comfortable with this situation.
Yep.
And for me, I can say in my life, that for the longest, I would be so eager wanting to give all the time so much of myself, that for
Yep.
me, my mask was always to be like, okay, I'm going to give everything from me. But
Mhm.
when it came to me receiving from those same
Yep.
sources
Yep. Yep.
or from those situations, it was like, I'm not getting anything. And
Yeah.
I'm feeling like, why? And I was always wondering, why is it that when anybody is asking me for something, and it could be anything, it could be just a conversation, it could be just a problem
Yeah.
solving idea, or it could be just a therapy talk, deep conversation where you kind of like talk people off the ledge.
Yeah.
But when it would be vice versa for me, it'd be like, I really don't get why nobody's picking up that I'm needing something.
Mm.
But my mask for me was to not be comfortable saying, hey, I need you to actually now pay attention to me. Like, I'm kind of struggling here
Yeah. Yeah.
because I am always the strong person and I'm always holding it all together. And most of the time, it really actually is like that too.
Yeah.
But there are days and weeks sometimes in between where I'm just like so down, where I would want, just to receive that same phone call and be like, hey, are you okay? I'm just checking in on you. And I feel like that soul search that we talked about, like just really being so in tune with ourselves, just allowing to set boundaries in
Yep.
order for those masks to either be removed or kind of like stripped off of us.
Yeah.
I wonder if that has something to do just with our own self needing to have the courage to really speak up, or can
Mm.
that also be for people to notice that that's not really who you are and they're pointing out that you're actually wearing a mask?
Yeah.
What do you think to that? What's your opinion?
Yeah. Yeah. I think because I think it does show itself in a lot of different ways. Like you talked about the soul searching, right? Like for me, it did show up as just like there was a hole, there was something missing. And so I went
Mhm.
searching for what was missing and came to find out that it wasn't actually something missing. It was a roadblock that I had put up. Like you said, wasn't really to have the hard conversations, regardless of situation. I felt like I became a chameleon where I could just blend in. And when it got a
Yeah.
little bit uncomfortable, I could blend my way out. Right. And just kind of like back out, I always think of like the funny kind of Homer Simpson commercial where he's backing into the bushes, right? That was the way that I
Yeah.
felt. And so I'm not exactly sure if I'm heading where you were heading with this, but I just felt like, yeah, that realization. And then I think what transpired for me was once I realized that it wasn't a hole that I was trying to fill, that it was actually, like I said, bringing down those barriers, being willing to stay in that uncomfortable situation a little bit longer, because like some people have real uncomfortable situations, right? Like real
Right.
pain, suffering, challenges. And again, I was never in that place where whatever label you want to put on it. And so I realized that it wasn't really necessarily actually pain and suffering. It was kind of getting through that surface layer and then
Sure.
being able to go deeper. And I think the big thing that happened for me was an understanding that I was looking outside for all of this, right? I was trying to find solutions from outside, from people, who should I be talking to, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't until I realized it's all right in here. It's an inside job, 100%. And
Right.
so, I mean, I didn't have to go out and have like hard conversations with other people. What I needed to do was
Yeah.
have the hard conversation with myself.
Yeah.
Be willing to, that voice inside of me that was telling me that I was unworthy, going, hey, thanks for reminding me to put my best foot forward, but I don't need to hear from you anymore. Right. Like kind of
Right.
that devil off of your shoulder, so to speak. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah. That's
that's the way I've kind of experienced it for myself. And I, you and I talked about this the other day, but the other part of this is I'm not going to sit here and try to claim that, oh man, I've solved it and the mask is gone.
right.
It's a constant, it's a daily process of saying, oh, hold on a second. Yep, there that was again. Yeah, that got a little uncomfortable and there was me fading back, but nope, let's lean in instead. And it doesn't have to look like I have to go crushing head on into whatever the challenge
Right.
is. It literally is that leaning in. Okay, that's a little bit out of my comfort zone. I'm not going to take this huge leap, but I'm at least going to stay put and see what happens.
Yeah. I feel like it's literally that awareness part that
Yeah.
inside of us all of a sudden gets triggered.
Yep.
And I'm not quite sure if it really has to do anything with age, that we're hitting specific milestone in our
Yep.
in our agely body or mind or whatever, or if it really just has something to do with just simply being ready,
Yeah.
simply being ready of really receiving and accepting and acknowledging that there is really something that just doesn't sit well with us anymore.
Yeah.
And then the challenges were kind of like, when people tell you, well, you're not the same anymore, you're not that same guy, like
Yeah.
you didn't used to be this way. And for
Mhm.
me, that was really difficult to take, because you're right, I'm not the same person anymore.
Mhm.
But for me, this was a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because for the longest time, I was still craving to get certain things in my characteristics under check, and execute specific situations, life situations of my life in a different way. And when I actually started to do that, certain ways and certain connections that didn't know me that way automatically kind of fell back and kind of fell off of me. And for a minute it was painful, but the other second it was like, well, that's great, because I'm shedding layers
Yeah.
off of me and of my character, and doing that self mirroring with myself, like you said, having those real hard conversation with oneself, where it's
Yeah.
like, am I really the way I execute in whatever characteristics? And I would go literally through all of the characteristics that I could name in myself.
Yeah.
Am I okay with that? Is there something that I feel like I need to, work on or want to get rid of even? And for me, the getting rid of part was the hardest, because that's really what you talked about, is in the comfort zone. I feel like that's exactly when we in that comfort zone of like,
Yeah.
and I need to get rid of that, that
Yeah.
kind of brought me through this whole time until I made it here. Well, if I don't have that, then what am I? Who am
Mhm.
I?
Yeah.
How am I? What? How am I supposed to even move forward without that part of me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I think you just hit it directly on the head. That really stands out for me is answering that question in a real way. Who am I?
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Like you said, this mask or these stories that we put on ourselves. You even talked before, like people go, oh, well, I don't know you. Right. Well, I didn't know me. And so
Right.
the real me though, that if you want to get to know the real me, that's where again we have to answer that question is who are we? What do we want to what were we put on this earth to do? And here's the thing that's been the turning point, right? So getting to understand that I had this mask on was a great first step. But then I had to figure out, okay, what do I do with that information? Right? Like you said, be intentional and
Right.
those types of things. But like, okay, that's great. Now I'm here, but what's the next step forward? Okay, so I do want to shed that mask more often. What's the process of taking that off? And what I've discovered, and this has been super powerful for me, is that I was looking to take off all of these quote unquote negative aspects of me. And that was never it, actually. it was actually the opposite way around. I didn't have to worry about the negative aspects because they would just fall away when I focused on my positive attributes, my strengths, my values, my passions. And then the negative stuff just goes away, right? Then I don't have to, I'm not sitting there in this comfort zone, quote unquote, bored, looking for ways to stimulate myself, going to the bars or whatever that might be. It's, I can just be me and, have conversations like this, show up
Right.
on a Zoom call, go on a speaking deal, have a one-on-one conversation, hanging out with my men's Bible study group, whatever that place might be. When I can just
Right.
lean into who I am and my strengths and my values and my passions, uh,
Mhm.
I don't have to worry about the other stuff. And so that was a huge turning point for me to understand that it wasn't about trying to shed the negative. It was more about focusing in on who I actually am and being that
Right.
person, and the negative stuff goes away on its own.
Right. And I feel also like when we allow ourselves to go through such process, which is really kind of like a transformation, it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like you're being, in I don't know how it's correctly pronounced in English, but a cocon, when you were
Yep.
like a butterfly, but
Yep. A
before it,
cocoon. Yep. Yep.
uh-huh, uh-huh. When we're in that phase, which really, if we just look at it from an animal point of view, it's really painful for that butterfly to transform inside that. That's
Yeah.
actually physical pain.
Yeah. Because they're
And
melting, right?
yeah,
They're basically melting. Yes. And being
yes.
remolded. Yes.
Yes. And so when we take that metaphor on our own life and when we
Mm.
are in that transitional phase, it is actually very painful to
Yep.
admit to ourselves certain aspects, certain ways of how
Mm.
we've behaved, or even the thought processes or thinking patterns
Yeah.
that we sometimes had towards either people or even our loved ones. I mean, it's so hurtful because sometimes all I wanted to do back then is just basically be done with a situation. But today I'm in a phase where I kind of want to look at that deeper and actually want to just look at it from a grace point of view. Like what made this person actually be this way
Yeah.
to now behave towards me this way? Like this had to come from somewhere. And I'm
Yeah.
not justifying bad behavior, not from myself to
Sure.
anybody or to anybody
Yeah.
to me,
Absolutely.
but looking at the aspects a little bit further, not just the actual movement and the action that
Yeah.
someone does, but
Yeah.
why is that being
Mm.
number one done to you? What
Yeah.
can that really help you to transform in? Like that pain that is being put on you or on me,
Yeah.
how can what is the good thing with that? And
Yeah.
that's really challenging to do, to go and say, you hurt me so bad, but yay, there's something amazing going to come out of that, and I'm going to go and just search what that is. But really,
Yeah.
with for me, with practice on and mindsets change about that, it did help me to actually see and realize certain things that I've never even seen. Even though I knew the quote unquote truth, i
Yeah.
couldn't i couldn't see it
Yeah.
until really going myself into a transformational phase, and then having others along with me either basically jump on my train or kind of leave my train, in
Mm-hmm.
order for me to actually really get what this really is about. Like you said, like what is this really about? Like what are you really meant to do in here with
Yeah.
your time while you're here? Like what is that? you
Mm-hmm.
know and I feel like for me, I discovered so many new things that I carried all this time inside of me, but I
Wow.
was so afraid or so embarrassed or so
Yep.
not enough self-confident to do them.
Right
And
here with you.
right. And so tell me for instance, one thing where you're like, you carried that inside of you, and through this you're like, I'm just going to do it. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm jumping in.
Yeah. Well, sometimes things happen in our lives and we go, oh, that's an interesting coincidence. And what
Yeah,
I've come
right.
to understand and realize is there's no such thing as a
Yeah.
coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. It's part of that transformational process that you were talking about, right? And like you said, the pains,
Mhm.
but all of it just shows up when it's supposed to show up. And we have to figure out a way to kind of let go of control of that. Um,
Mhm.
and, and so what I saw for me was this understanding that these things are kind of coming into my life, and when they come into my life, I need to go back to what you were just talking about there and go, okay, why is this actually happening? Right. Regardless of what it is, let go of the label of what this thing is and get
Mhm.
down into the root of what's this telling me. And it's actually, so I've got a book about creating a business that you love, but we use a lot of principles and mindset to help people build that up. And the very
Mhm.
first principle, or what I call fundamental, is to empower yourself. And it's this idea of taking 100% responsibility, which is what you were just saying, right? Like, okay, am I supposed to go, yippee, this bad thing happened to me from this person, and be okay with that? No, it's not about that. But you can't change that person. You can't make them
Right.
do or be anything more than they're doing or being in that moment. And therefore, all you can control are your responses to that and your understanding and your utilization of that to help yourself grow. And so
Mhm.
that to me was a huge turning point when I was able to empower myself through giving up the blaming, complaining, excuse making of all the things outside of my control, and
Right.
come back to, how did I create, promote, or allow that to happen in my life?
Right.
Again, no judgment one way of should that have happened, not have happened, because the reality is it happened. And so we can't change that. And
Right.
so yeah, it's moving forward into, what can I learn from that, and how can I grow from that, and those types of
Mhm.
things. And so I
Mhm.
think for me that was a huge key moment when I was willing to accept that. I kind of tease my teasing my family, my mom and dad. Like I said, I had a wonderful upbringing, great parents, but they came from an era, and I'm a Gen Xer, and so we kind of have that era of, we're the world's best complainers. Right? The weather's always bad. This, that, or the other
Right.
thing. And so that was the story, right? That was the mask. That was the easy button to get out of a situation. We just complain about it. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
but now
Or
I've
just
just given
blame,
away. Yeah, I've
right, or
just
just
given
blame
away
the
my power.
circumstance.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
that was the light bulb when I've said, "Oh man, I have no control over changing my future when
Right.
I am blaming that or complaining about something that's out of my control."
Right. And then with that is the choice that I, for me, with all of that, what you said,
Yeah,
that I actually had a choice. And it's so simple when we think about it. But
yeah,
like you said, when you come first from a specific era, or when you are, like I said, you're taking on specific patterns, you then just stumble into them. And it's
hmm,
so easy to
easy. Yeah,
remain there because listen, everybody's done it. Well,
yeah,
mom did it, dad did it, who
yeah,
did it. That's what we just did,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so, but then when you grow up, I feel like you have a choice to be like, okay, just because that's where I'm from,
yeah,
I can still choose to take whatever part is wonderful for my current mindset
yeah,
with me, but also create something else, and also just choose to be like, okay, the weather is bad today. Great, great day for art at home.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
great day for a movie and Netflix and popcorn. Great.
yeah,
So I feel like it's always the way of you choosing, do you want to allow this to affect you the way it does or
yeah,
not? And for me, a key turning point was when my mom died, because literally I had no choice other than to accept that.
yeah.
And
Mm,
I've been in pain and I've been in really deep sorrow, but at one point I literally asked myself, what is it that I want to do from today on? Do
mm,
I want to remain in that
right.
sad space,
Mm,
or do I want to embrace life the best I can, knowing and just accepting that they will always be with me, just in a different way?
yeah,
You know,
yep,
and I'm not saying it was that easy how I'm saying it right now, but literally fundamentally it was just a choice. It was just a
yeah,
choice to be like, you know what, it's either this way or that way. I can remain in sorrow as long as I need and want, and as long as my temple is telling me this feels good and I need this actually in
yep,
order then to heal.
yep,
Or I can be like, you know what? I want to heal, so I'm just going to accept that. But I also wanted to add something, what you had said, taking responsibility, right?
yep,
Because when you said that you contributed to allowing or creating or contributing to a specific situation that was quote unquote done to you or had
Yep.
happened to you. And
Yep.
as we discovered, there's no coincidence. And so
Yep.
all of that happened
Yep.
for 100% reason.
Yep.
But just taking responsibility for that and saying, you know what, I somehow created this energetically because I needed this to then fundamentally get my healing or my transformation out of that.
Yep.
And then even taking it a step further to even apologize to the person that has done that horrible thing to you and saying, like, you know what, I am sorry. I am sorry that you also had this horrible transformation, because within that, you had to do your own mistakes in order to learn. And one of them was maybe to hurt me. And I forgive you. And I'm sorry. And I love you no matter what. Like, thank
Mm-hmm.
you for actually coming in my life. And I really mean this, coming in my life for hurting me so bad that through that only hurt that only you did to me in such magnitude, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
was I able to understand and to really gain anything that I've never gained before internally. And if you would have not done that to me, I don't think I would have gotten here. So actually, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Powerful.
so
Yeah.
powerful, so powerful. And I
Yeah.
feel like, and you know, that grace part, you know, just understanding that we all are always in the same position at one point or the other in our life.
Yeah.
Some of us are a little bit ahead, some of us are at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
some of us do the exercise 100 million times because it's
Yep.
so much
Back and
fun,
forth,
and we
back and forth. Yeah.
hey, and we choose not to pick
Yeah.
up the cues or learn the lesson or whatever.
Yeah. Sure.
But but you know, fundamentally, we are all in the same boat, paddling to the same rainbow.
Yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right. We are. And I, a realization for me that was like just super powerful. This thought was just popped into my head, showed up, the universe put it there and said, when I'm ready for a solution, it will show up. And,
Mhm.
and that to me was like a reminder of what you talked about just a little bit ago too, about we have that choice, right? We can take any of those situations or done to us, right? And some people put that on as their mask, right? That becomes their story. I had this terrible thing happen to me, and that's going to be my story, and I'm going to live in that. And
Right,
guess what? You unfortunately then get to live in that, and it's probably not exactly where you want to be. Or
right,
like you said, you can thank them, accept that transformation, and go, that was part of my story, but it's not
right,
the ending of the book. It's not
right.
the finish. I get to continue to write my story beyond that. But and I think it does come back to the original conversation that we started off with here is, again, that becomes our mask. That was really painful. So I'm going to go get into my comfort zone. I'm going to put this mask on, become a chameleon in my case. And,
Mhm.
um, and because the other thing that I am kind of working on or thinking about is like, again, I didn't have all these really terrible things that quote unquote happened to me. And so I asked myself why, but then I go, you know what? Does that really matter? Do I have to have a terrible, terrible thing to transform? Not at all.
Not at
And so
all.
I think you're just letting go of that, so there was a new kind of mask that I threw on for a little
Mhm.
bit, right? So I
Mhm.
kept trying on masks, realizing just stop, just be who you are. And when I can
Right.
come from that place, it like you just mentioned, it is so simple at its core to, really just be say, oh, just be who you are. Right. But the
Mhm.
process can be difficult. And I think
Yeah,
that's actually where the growth happens, is in that difficulty.
absolutely. I feel the very same way. And it is scary, and it is painful, and it could be very challenging and very difficult,
Hmm.
because sometimes we don't know anymore who we are,
Yeah.
because we're so either codependent on another human, or we are so in tuned in other people's lives that all we do is just really focus on others. And like you said, sometimes we focus so much on the outer things instead of just take a break, sit down with yourself. Like, take a break, sit
Yeah.
down, go inward. And it just doesn't have to be like a big woo process. It can
Yes.
literally be as simple as every day I'm going to make it a point, because that's how I started for me. every day I made it a point of literally taking one small amount of time, sit down with me and just literally not do anything other than just stay in silence. And it would take me forever to get this
Mhm.
inner peace going thing, because it just so many thoughts,
Sure.
and I got to do this and I got to run here and I blah, 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 blah. And so, but with every day being consistent, things started to calm down, and then things started to show up, memories that I haven't remembered in years, that have been buried, not because they're necessarily horrible, some of them were, but some of them
Sure.
were just whatever,
Hmm.
but they led me all to this little puzzle that then started to come together. And I'm like, oh wow, this is so simple. And I love what you said. It's just tune in you and just remember what you love to do when
Yeah.
you were a child. Remember when we went back, like, what is it really that you used to love to do? Because that's what I started to do in COVID time. Literally, I was thinking, I love puzzles. Okay, I love painting books.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
books
Coloring
that
books.
already have a picture.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I love it. So I did a ton of stuff like that, and it brought back things inside of me where I'm like, oh my God, I forgot this feeling, and then when we were allowed again to go to the playgrounds, I was with my child. I was on the swing, swinging. I'm like, I forgot
Well,
how much
yeah.
fun it is to be on a swing, And
Yeah.
so I love the fact that you said, just literally allow yourself to be who you really are. And by
Yeah.
discovering that, it's so amazing. You're going on this ride with yourself where you're like, wow, I forgot. Or some things just come up and you're like, oh, I never knew that this is something that I actually gonna like doing or
Sure.
enjoying, And so it's really, and then like you said, things just seem to fall off because I feel like the universe then opens doors and windows and opportunities and people, places, situations just bottle in
Yeah.
where you're like, oh man, cool. I'm just in this group and they're now doing painting with stones. And I just read about that and just amazing. And it just kind of sort of happens. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It, well, I think I love, because as you were talking about that, right? I did this like journey back in my own life of like the things that I love to do and how I got here, and again the fact that there are no coincidences. That maybe a little off topic, but I think kind of still speaking to this some. Like for me, my big passion outside of working with small business owners is to be involved in the volleyball world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have family there. I didn't grow up there. The way I got involved with volleyball for the very first time, I was in, I think it was like a junior in high school, and my dad loved playing basketball. And he always wanted me to be a basketball player, and I was never very good at it. But we would go to these like open gyms. So we went down to this open gym one night, and the basketball court was packed and a little above our skill level, and we'd already gotten there, and then we look over and there's a volleyball court over there, and there was space for us to get on the volleyball court. And so we're like, well, we're here, let's go play volleyball. We don't know what the heck they're doing. And that little spark right there, like, just allowed, like, now I love it. I think about it, I talk about it, I've coached, my son is playing volleyball right now and doing very well with it and loves it. So and so I guess my point is, the things that happen when we slow down and are willing to look for them or allow
Mm-hmm.
them to show up, that's when the
Mm-hmm.
real magic is going to happen. When we've got
Mm-hmm.
it like gripped so tight onto what we
Yeah.
should be doing, who we're supposed to be, putting
Right.
the mask on, um it it's not going to happen. I'm sorry to burst anybody's bubble that think they have it all under
Yeah.
control, but it's not going
Yeah.
to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. It's either not going to happen or it's really, really going to be combined with a lot of struggle.
Mm,
Making it happen,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I feel like that part just really being more in tune, because I feel like the more we are more in tune with our own self and really giving the self-respect to our own temple, our own mind,
Yeah.
trying our mind and our heart to become kind of like one frequency of
Yep.
really like checking in, like, am I okay today?
Yeah.
Actually, my body tells me like I have so much to do, but my body tells me I gotta take 5 minutes. I got to take 5 minutes. I need to sit down. I need to take a deep breath, or I need to have an iced coffee, or I need to have a snack, or I need to
Yeah.
put on my favorite song or something,
Yeah.
that I need to, for a second, recharge and just regroup. And if one thing on my list will not get done today, so be it. but my inner happiness and my inner self-respect to me saying like this is as far as I can go or give to someone else, even, you know, energy wise or friendship wise or time or favor, whatever, is literally all in a combination of this is what I can give, but here is my boundary and here's my reasonable request that I need in return
Yeah.
in order for me to really be fulfilled in this relation. And it could be just things to yourself that you give yourself, or it could be from other people or just situations, you know?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes we're staying stuck in a situation because we think we have to.
Yes.
And I understand that feeling because so many things are maybe tied to that I have to stay here. But that's exactly where I feel like your faith versus controlling part inside all of us can come into, where it's like either you say you have faith, then you live in faith and you let go anyway, because this simply doesn't feel good no more. And you just have faith jumping and saying like, look,
Yep.
I don't know what's gonna, but this I can't anymore.
Yeah.
Or you literally be like, you know, no, this is doing this for me and I can't do without it because if I let go of this, then and
Yeah.
then we're in this controlling, fearful, whatever. So that was, if anything, really hard for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm such a planner, I'm such a doer that
Yeah.
that part, like, what do you mean letting go? Excuse me?
Exactly.
No
Yeah.
plan, no itinerary, no nothing.
I'm right there with you.
You know. And but you know, as I learned, and I'm still learning honestly, and I'm still right in the middle of that learning curve in the second, I honestly feel so much freer to just be like, you know what, anything that comes to mind is like, you know what, right away I allowed a thought in, but with the same second I say it's okay.
Yep.
My divine creator will take care of it. How? I don't need to know, but it will happen.
Yeah.
This is I don't know. I don't want to bother myself with that because
Yeah.
it's not in my control simply.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And
Mhm.
when then you start again getting away from who you are and what you were put on this earth to do. And
Right.
yeah. And I love that you said earlier on, as you were talking there too, this idea of have to. I
Yeah.
actually just wrote a blog. It's coming out next week. And so maybe by the time this is out, it'll be live, but it was about this idea of have to versus get to. And it's,
Right.
for me, it's written about, you know, how a business owner might look at that. But I also know for me personally that anytime I'm in that place of I have to do this, I have to remind myself that either I need to change my mindset and understand that I get to do this to get to some other point, right? Go through the hard thing maybe or whatever. Or I need to rearrange my priorities and get more get tos into my daily, right? Like you said, take that break, listen to the music. I get to recharge.
Right.
And so being aware of some of those things that we say to ourselves too can be really powerful. And that for me is what allows me to kind of keep the mask or that comfort zone at bay. When I'm working from that passion, from that area of strength and value, then it
Yeah.
is also very impactful for me.
Yeah. Oh my God. I don't want to add anything because I think that was a perfect golden nugget to wrap it up. So
Perfect.
I don't want to add anything. I just want to leave it exactly there because this is yes to it all.
Here, get my pom poms out. That was a great conversation.
Oh,
Yay!
cool. Well, Aaron, thank you so much again. I really appreciated this conversation. Your transparency, your golden nuggets you just dropped were amazing. I have to admit, certain things that you said, I felt goosebumps. And when that happens to me, I know that, you know, the other side and like the universe is literally here saying this is exactly what was so wonderful to bring out and to really just mention. And to you, podcast lovers, as always, you know, my mic is your mic. Is there's maybe anything you want to share, you have on your heart about this topic or any topic that you feel comfortable sharing with me, you are my guest. You're truly welcome. But until then, stay rooted, stay blessed, stay grounded, and always stay connected to love, the strongest force in the universe.